We are here today with Suresh Narayanan, the finest and well-known corporate leader and a good friend. And he really doesn't need an introduction in my view, but let me go ahead and introduce him. So Suresh is the chairman and the managing director of Nestle India with over 30 years of experience in the FMCG industry and has held senior management roles in leading global companies. Starting as a management trainee with Hindustan Lever, Suresh successfully climbed the rungs with joining Nestle India, then moving to Indochina and Singapore, and now back in India since 2015. Suresh has been awarded the Medal of Commendation by the Government of Singapore for excellence in employee relations. He was also presented with the Best CEO MNC Award at Forbes India Leadership Award 2017 and was recently named as the Best CEO in FMCG segment by Business Today. He's also a strong propagator of women participation in corporate world. I love that bit. Honestly, it's excellent. And had honored the Digital Women Award 2019. With this, I would like to welcome Suresh to this talk, which undoubtedly will be insightful.
Thank you, Rupinder. Thank you. Thank you very much. It's really a pleasure for me to chat with a friend and also do something for JSA, which has Jyoti Sagar, who's also a very good friend. So therefore, I know that I'm in good company.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. So we'll start with the much talked about subject, digitization. As you know, India is in the middle of digital revolution, and with ample of focus actually from Niti Aayog as well as the corporates. And this revolution has changed things from banking to handicraft business, from logistics to agro-business. In fact, panchayats are also going digital. And of course, the Indian consumer industry is not untouched. So different worlds of the traditional retail sector and technology-led platforms are converging. The convergence may impact, in my view, the organizational structures, the strategies, and as well as create differentiation in the marketplace. So with this context, Suresh, being in the driver's seat of the world's largest food and beverage company, how are you dealing with this transformation?
Well, Rupinder, I think in a sense what you have summarized is something that is really, it started off small and now has become a full-blown storm in terms of how companies and how organizations need to respond to the digital age. I think till the digital age dawned upon us, most of us found our competitive advantage in what I call information asymmetry.
Right.
That we didn't have the same information as the others gave us that competitive advantage to make ourselves stronger and to also define our business models. The digital age has really, in a sense, converged the information asymmetry that exists between organizations. And I think with the consumer, and especially in the pandemic and post-pandemic, getting very strongly digital, digital in terms of communication, interface, in terms of supply chain, in terms of shopping, everything has become very, very digital. So I believe that organizations would need to have what I call the 5 A's in order to cope with the digital revolution. Number one is anticipation. I think companies need a very strong sense of anticipation on what trends and how the consumers are moving. They need a very strong articulation, the capability to be able to understand how they need to frame the structures and context of their organization. They need a lot of agility.
That's correct.
In terms of being agile, in terms of being capable of shifting in real time and very, very quickly. They need to be adaptable, which means that the haloed portals of the past are and what we call legacy systems. We used to say it almost with a lot of respect
Right.
Legacy systems now are getting redefined, and we have to probably forget the legacies and start looking at building a new future. And last A is an amoebic organization capability, which is like an amoeba, to be
Right.
able to change the structures, to be able to have bolt-ons, and to be able to nuance yourself and your business model and the value that you add to the journey of the consumer. And I think these 5 A's, in a sense, will define the corporates of the future.
Yes, I completely agree. And in fact, very nicely put together, Suresh, and very true. So in that context, only just from digitization, talking a little bit about consumer behavior. Now, there is a change in consumer behavior as well, and somewhat, I would say, loyalty in our sense of things. Market experts have even highlighted different purchasing patterns of the Indian consumer. Pandemic has also, I would say, somewhat affected consumers' choice of products. While some witnessed disruption in their spending capacity itself, and some focused more towards fitness and buying healthy products. So, Suresh, did you notice that alteration in the consumption pattern? And what are like broad level measures that Nestle India has undertaken to deal with this changing patterns?
I think it's a very good question, Rupinder, because if there is one area where consumers have really made marked shifts, I would say that apart from the engagement with e-commerce and digital, I believe that it is in the choice of consumer products that they have done. What we have noticed a few trends during this pandemic. The first one, of course, being in the consumer food and beverage and nutrition space. We have seen a clear disconnect between out-of-home brands and in-home brands. Out-of-home, as you know, the whole hotel, restaurant, travel, tourism sector really imploded during this pandemic. And a lot of the interest, therefore, has moved to in-home consumption. So some of our leading brands like Maggi and Milkmaid and Nescafe and others have become very strongly in-home led. And in-home also, there has been a lot of interest that consumers have shown towards hobbies and activities that have never been there in the past to that extent. That is one trend. Second is, I think consumers have started, in the pandemic where your existence itself was threatened. I think as humans, we try and hark back to the familiar and the comfortable brands that have defined our lives. We want to go back to cling to those things that we feel secure with.
Right.
And I think there, some of the trusted brands and legacy brands have really proven to be strong.
So true.
Because there is an association. If I have my cup of Nescafe, if I have my bowl of Maggi, or if I have my Kit Kat, I feel that life is normal, even if it is completely abnormal outside.
Even there's pandemic outside.
Yes.
You're at least doing your
You are doing
things.
your thing. The third one, I think, is one of the words, Rupinder, which has never occurred before in the consumer lexicon and which has appeared in the pandemic, is the word immunity.
Yes.
Think of how many times, Rupinder, you and I have worried about immunity. We've been worried about fitness, but never about immunity.
Not immunity,
right?
That's correct.
We don't worry ourselves about immunity. Now, immunity and immunity-related products have taken primacy in the consumer's choice. Fourth, nutrition, right? Good quality nutrition has never been in the list of priorities that consumers have defined over a period of time.
Right.
There are, of course, admittedly, a segment of consumers for whom nutrition is very important, but by and large, you think that you're having something to eat, it must be nutrition.
Right.
Now, mums, working professionals and others are questioning what nutrition are they getting.
That's
so
right.
Nutrition is becoming also important. And the final trend really is, because of the explosion in e-commerce, the brand choices also have multiplied a hell of a lot.
That's correct.
So there has been a convergence between legacy brands and some of the new brands on the market, because they have found a platform
That's right.
that is much easier and more ubiquitous as compared to going through the traditional brick and mortar channel.
That's right.
And I think that has also given a lot of opportunities. So in consumer terms, there's been a redefinition
Right.
of the importance of the articulation of what consumers want. And I think that has proven to play well for those companies, and I count Nestle in that,
Right.
who are respected, who are trusted manufacturers and marketers of brands. And I think that has been one of the important kind of outcomes
Right.
of this pandemic.
Not a bad outcome. And also, you're right about immunity. I think the amount we notice B12, D3, zinc, magnesium, and various other things, even on the products, what has what value.
Yes.
I don't think we've done that in the past.
Yes.
So things have changed. Yes, the patterns have changed. And speaking for myself, I'm going to talk about, one of my favorite subject, and actually very close to my heart, which is women empowerment. So in this pandemic, I feel one concern that has been is the job losses, right? And in the urban and in the rural areas, particularly the women workers, I would say, were in a precarious situation. And I noticed a bigger impact and pressure on women employees, and I still notice that even while we are still in the pandemic, right? And my understanding is, and you can confirm that, Suresh, that Nestle is one of the companies which is acknowledged for making efforts to ensure job security to its employees. So what are your thoughts on women employee prospects and in general for women empowerment?
Look, I think Rupinder, you've touched a very, very important subject, and I think for me personally, it's a subject of vital importance as a company. I completely acknowledge that I think this pandemic has wreaked havoc on women and women's careers and women's jobs. I mean, any statistic that you see, whether it's in India or you read overseas,
Right.
The people who have lost the maximum number of jobs and still do not get their jobs back, even when the economy is starting to bounce back, are women. And I think it's a travesty of basic justice in this world, but that's
Right.
the reality. Now,
That's right.
one of the things that we did as a company, firstly at Nestle, diversity is not a quota. So one of the things that I am very particular about is I said, look, I think it is very demeaning to a woman to be told that you got this job because you're a woman. I mean, one of the things that we questioned early on, and a couple of years ago, I said, why don't we have women engineers in our company?
Right.
And one of the answers I got was, yeah, but women don't like to join companies like Nestle, and especially if they're engineers. So I said, this is rubbish. This is utter nonsense.
Not true.
Because it doesn't work that way. We started, and lo and behold, Rupinder, I'm glad that in the 5 years of my tenure as the head of the company, today we have 60% of our trainees, technical trainees, who are women.
Wow. Excellent.
So they are getting into
so
positions.
encouraging.
They are getting into positions of responsibility in manufacturing, in engineering, in quality management. I'm putting up the 9th factory of Nestle in Sanand in Gujarat, and one of the mandates that I gave was 50% of the employee strength has to be women.
Excellent.
I said it has to be. So operators
Excellent.
should be women. I mean, who has legislated or who has proven that a woman cannot be a good operator in a factory? So I think this is a mindset shift. During this pandemic, I must say that women employees of the company have been especially impacted.
Yes.
Especially impacted.
Yes.
I think the burden of running homes, of managing children, of managing in-laws and relatives and brother-in-laws and sisters-in-laws and various other people is really proving to be quite a challenge. And in fact, today, while I have still maintained work from home because I am extraordinarily cautious about getting my people back, one of the cohorts where there is a strong desire to come back to the office is actually women.
That's true, because when you're home, I'm assuming that a lot of people have these problems of having the family around, where
Yes.
there are certain expectations, which is typical, which is the norm, it's expectation.
Yes, at Nestle, I'm not saying that we are the best in the world. We have a lot to do there. But for example, a simple thing: a woman after her delivery coming back to work,
Right.
and with her child, how do you expect her to nurse the child and to take care of the child if she has
That's
to do a job in the office as well? So what we said was, if you have to travel for work, you, your child, and your maid
Right.
will travel at company cost, and
Wow.
in the hotel it will be borne by the company. So you stay there for 2 days or 3 days or 30 days.
That is awesome. That's
We-
really
because
good. I wish more corporates would think like that.
but I
Suresh,
think-
really,
I think-
and more companies would.
I think the sad part is that I don't know, somewhere along the line we forget that we have mothers, wives, and sisters, and we somehow dissociate our lives. You know, it's one treatment for your wife and for your sister, and
but
one
at
treatment
workplace,
for your
the
colleague.
treatment changes.
So I
yeah.
think that's the
Right.
dichotomy we have to bridge.
Right. No, this is very important, and thank you for sharing all this. And it's very encouraging, actually, very, very motivating. So another subject which is kind of close to my heart, of course, is law, which I'm practicing. I won't take too much of your time on that, but just quickly wanted to talk about the recent changes in the consumer laws, right? And in that, I wanted to just understand that the reason why why this law came about was to address challenges such as the non-disposable of cases, which was taking the longest time. And within a reasonable time, disposal of the cases, product liability, and transformation in consumer industry through digitization. What are your views? Do you see any changes on ground with this new regulations coming about? I'm sure you would have obviously analyzed and made some changes internally, but on ground, have you seen any impact, or do you have any thoughts on this
Look, I think
change in the legal regime?
it's a step, Rupinder, in the right direction. I think consumer empowerment, consumer case disposals,
Right.
and also not every manufacturer in this country is necessarily true to a cause.
Right.
And true to the quality that he professes to offer the consumer.
Right.
So I think to that extent, it is an extremely important initiative that has been done. Disposal of cases, I think, is extremely important. I mean, it's like the prevention of food adulteration laws
That's correct.
that got superseded by the food laws.
That's right.
With the FSSAI. I
Right.
think some of the old laws were draconian. I mean, cases would not get disposed for 8, 9, 10 years. And I remember when I was working at Hindustan Unilever, we had a case for Dalda Vanaspati, and the Vanaspati was 9 years old. So how would you make an analysis of a product that had completely degenerated
That's
during that
true. That's
period,
true.
and then you were holding companies responsible for it?
That's right.
So I
Much
think
needed.
I think it's a step in the right direction.
Right.
I must say that I've not yet seen too much of action on the ground, and that's probably because we have had the pandemic in the middle.
That's correct. That's
So
also
we have
one
to
of the
watch, but I think in as much as the laws are able to nab those manufacturers who are unscrupulous,
Okay.
I think it is good. But typically what happens is that these kind of laws usually tend to go after established and honest players.
And that's where the concern.
And that's where the concern is.
correct.
That's where the concern is.
Well, we hope that doesn't happen.
Sure.
Well, we do hope. So, moving on to the last question in the interest of time, I want to talk about what JF Kennedy once stated. So, he said, when written in Chinese, the word crisis is composed of two characters, right? One represents danger and the other represents opportunity. Of course, some Chinese linguists may have a better explanation to this, but my next question actually is focused on danger and opportunities. With over 3 decades of successful leadership across multiple and large organizations in the consumer industry, Suresh, you have witnessed industry transformation and successfully managed crisis times, especially having moved to Nestle India when Maggi was a crisis. So my final question really is, what are your thoughts on preventing and managing crisis situations, particularly in a jurisdiction like ours, particularly in India?
I think it's a very good question, Rupinder, and I think yes, I've been, I don't know whether uniquely blessed or appropriately cursed to be always put into hot water.
Crisis situations.
I've had the pandemic, and before that the Maggi crisis, and before that I was for 5 years in North Africa. in Egypt, and then I
missed that.
was there in the Arab Spring. So that was again very stressful times. And then I was before that in Singapore when Lehman Brothers happened. So
Okay.
I was stuck in a country which was the first country to be declared in recession. So I think I've seen my fair share of crises, and I really see that there are 2 or 3 characteristics that are going to become very important in trying to manage a crisis. Firstly, I've learned the hard way that crisis doesn't come with a calling card. You think there is something very small.
Right.
How did the Maggie crisis start? It started with an innocuous report that was taken by a food inspector in Barabanki, right? And he talked about some misdemeanors, alleged misdemeanors, and then decided to blow up this whole issue.
Right.
And it started from a small misdemeanor to the biggest food recall, brand recall in the history of India. So I think what's happened is, number one is never assume that a crisis will come with a calling card, which means that your capability of the organization to be able to sense the environment is super critical.
That's correct.
Which means that your leadership has to be equipped for that sensing and for that response skills.
Right.
Many of us are not trained. For example, when I came back, I gave my first live television interview to CNBC within days of my coming. And I have not done a live television interview during a crisis ever in my life. The only time I did was in Egypt, but that was lip synced into Arabic. So I didn't even know what I spoke.
What really you said.
So you see, so I think the responsiveness in terms of anticipation and of sensing is so very important.
Right.
Second, I think a crisis is all about living your purpose and values. And I think this is not an old-fashioned word. In the pandemic, I've been hearing the word purpose a lot.
Yes.
And values a lot.
Yes.
Some people use it in a very fashionable sense that it's time that I need to look at my purpose or values. I think the fact is that if companies invest more in culture than in capex, I think we will have a lot more better run companies. We don't work on culture, which is the unspoken language of response when instructions are not given.
True.
That's culture.
True.
Unfortunately, we don't talk about it as often as we should. And I keep quoting, and I love to read Kabir, the poet Kabir. And Kabir said a doha, which is I think very appropriate he said about prayer and what is important about culture. He said, "Dukh mein sumiran sab kare, sukh mein kare na koi.
True.
Jo sukh mein sumiran kare, dukh kahe ko hoy."
True.
So I think the problem is that if you pray in bad times, there is no point, because you should be praying in good times.
True.
And that is the same thing about culture. So I think culture, purpose, and values become center stage in terms of response mechanisms. And the third thing which is important is, I think, the leadership bench strength, starting from the leader himself, is extremely important. In an age when you are 30 something, you want to be the CEO of a large enterprise. There is some reason why 50 somethings become CEOs, because somehow you have to take a rap on the knuckles, and your skin has to be scalded before you take on such roles.
So you do believe in that, right? So deep insights comes with experience.
It comes with experience.
And
you see, there is no playbook for this.
True.
The pandemic didn't come with a playbook.
True.
The Maggie crisis for me didn't come with a playbook. When I was there in North Africa, I didn't have a playbook.
Right.
So I think these 2 or 3 things are becoming extremely important, and I really hope, and when I look at the younger generation of executives and of youngsters coming out of universities today, and I spend a fair bit of time, Rupinder, talking to young people in universities,
Right.
and what I'm amazed is that they are so technologically savvy.
Right.
They are so intelligent, they are so confident, they are so articulate.
That's right.
And yet they fall flat on their faces when confronted with a soft skill issue.
That's right.
And most of us realize, Rupinder, your success in your career, or whatever limited success I've had, has had nothing to do with our qualifications.
Oh no, it's not just the qualification.
We might have
correct.
been, you know, I was middling in whatever I was doing,
Right.
and I was never the topper of my batch.
Right.
And yet, 30 years down the road, when I see some of my classmates, some have done reasonably well, and some others have left themselves wanting.
Agree.
Right.
Yes.
And it's invariably because of the leadership and the self capability to, you know, as Mandela said, it is never a problem for a man to fall. It is important for him to rise again.
Yes. Absolutely.
And I think that is the important feature
Yes.
that we need to develop in our people.
So true. And I completely agree. Culture, leadership are two critical elements to manage a crisis.
Yes.
So thank you so much, Suresh. Really appreciate the time and your thoughts and the insights. Completely valuable, I think, to everyone who our listeners are. And really appreciate all that you've shared with us today.
Thank you,
Thank you
Rupita.
so much.
It's a privilege for me to be on your show.
Thank you so much.